Much of fantasy fiction is firmly grounded in certain shared tropes. These range from broad themes and plot elements, good versus evil, fate versus free will, a hero's coming-of-age journey, to more narrowly defined aspects of world building. Fantasy races are one such trope. Since the days of Tolkien, many authors felt compelled, by either the muses or market forces, to include various iterations of dwarves and elves in their work, mirrors for the human protagonist to contrast against or aspire to. Elves would be an ancient people, proud and noble and haughty, in love with light and music and magic. Dwarves would be no less ancient but far less flighty, true to their word, as unyielding as the stone they work, at home in the deep dark corners of the earth. One celestial and the other chthonic, these fictional creatures were united only in their distinctly inhuman nature. Each fantasy race sat in an uncanny valley of its own, reminiscent of mankind, and yet starkly different. They were, above all else, not the race of man. In R. Scott Baker's second Apocalypse novels, a single species plays this role, prosaically but hilariously named Nonmen. They are the beautiful and arrogant elven sorcerer. They are the resilient and fatalistic dwarven stonemason. They are a cruel and imposing father figure to man, a glorious past that we can never really live up to. In their own language, the Nonmen call themselves Kunuroi, or the people of dawn, for reasons they can no longer remember. And there, at the outset, we learn what defines them better than anything else: loss. The Nonmen are a dwindling race of semi-amnesiacs that have been circling the drain for millennia, their beginnings largely lost to time. It is the Psalm of Immimerul that tells us what little we know of the Nonmen's progenitor, a Promethean founding father who was either banished to or sought refuge in the depths of the earth, away from the gods and their judgment. Immimerul delved deep into the underground, and when the starving sky was lost far above, decided to sire mortal children. He cut the flesh from off his limbs and placed it in the wombs of lions, where it slowly gestated into the first of the Nonmen. From their titanic sire, these early Nonmen learned sorcery, songs that could reshape the natural world they so loved, blasphemously altering divine creation. This primordial sin would always hang above the Nonmen. Their earliest legacy is sorcerous and Promethean, blithely defiant of the gods above. And in the world built by R. Scott Baker, sin is not only an objectively evident phenomenon, but a self-perpetuating, metastasizing one. Mythical accounts differ on the specifics, but when Immimerul's son Sonos married his sister to spawn countless offspring, possibly murdering his father in the process, another fundamental flaw of the Nonmen became evident. They were fractious beyond all measure, incessantly waging war against each other. Sin, strife, loss. These are the lenses through which the Nonmen must be seen, the seeds of their inevitable demise, sown at the dawn of time. Physically and mentally, the Nonmen are not too dissimilar from men. Bipedal humanoids, standing tall and proud, yearning to leave their mark on the world and be recognized for it by their peers. Their skin is pale and hairless, their facial features eerily beautiful by human standards. Men find it nearly impossible to tell Nonmen apart, implying that their forms have been perfected and standardized to a high degree, allowing for minimal variety. Nonmen bodies are both more powerful and more graceful than those of men. Our heads reach only up to a point between their elbows and their shoulders. Our movements are rarely able to equal their feats of agility and strength. Nonmen's sight is markedly different from the way men observe the world. They do not see color, at least not in the same way that we do. Two-dimensional paintings are meaningless to them. Depth is what their eyes focus on instead, relief and counter-relief. Almost all of their visual art is sculptural. Nonmen perceive the passage of time differently as well. They were long-lived, even before the fatal inoculation that has made them effectively immortal. Perhaps as a consequence of that, Nonmen art seeks to depict a subject in different stages of its existence, showing how it morphs from one state of being into the next. Even after that type of statuary has fallen out of style, Nonmen kept carving into their carvings, creating sculptures within existing sculptures. Stone tableaus detailed to such an absurd degree that they ended up being almost incomprehensible to men. These artistic quirks hint at patterns of thought somewhat orthogonal to human ones, but it is impossible to discern how much of this is due to their innately alien qualities and how much to the great affliction that they all suffer from. For reasons that we'll get into later, the Nonmen are an expiring race of immortals, slowly succumbing to dementia and despair. Memory dwindles, even for the wisest among them, and lives grow erratic. Many Nonmen would do just about anything for a chance at recalling who they once were, even for a moment or two. Some give in to despair, waiting for the end with the patience of senile immortals. Others rage against the dying of the light and seek out the company of man, using them as elzu, books, living reminders of lost glories. Still others seek apocalyptic solutions, trying to bring about the end of the world, a new reality in which there would be no meaning. No one would know or remember anything at all. But to understand fanatical Nonmen, we must look to their beginnings. To get a sense of how their society collapsed, we must first get a glimpse of what it was like. The exact number of Nonman mansions is unknown, although the mightiest numbered only 9. For thousands of years before the emergence of men, the Nonmen spread across all corners of the known world. They lived in what they called mansions, city-states built inside great, hollowed-out mountains. Each mansion traded with and warred against others of its kind, developing regional differences and long-standing enmities. Over time, the Nonmen would codify almost all the lore ever known in the history of the world, with relatively modest contributions to be made after their decline. Their cultural standards were also highly advanced, surviving works of their poetry and philosophy still quoted millennia later. Nonmen society was organized into what men might recognize as castes or classes. These groupings determine one's role in life, though some exceptional individuals are known to have transcended them. A Nonmen might be of the Ishroi, an aristocratic warrior caste, the proudest among them claiming descent from rebellious Sonos. Alternatively, a Nonmen might belong to the Kuya, sorcerer priests who sang the song of Imimral, bending the world to their design in defiance of the starving sky. There may have been other castes of which we know little about, traders, artists, and the like, but the indignity of physical labor was left to the Mwama, a stunted, slavish pariah people, possible ancestors to modern man. The relationship of Nonmen and these primitive men varied across time and space. In the mansion of Chil-Oxus, they were little more than chattel. In the mansion of Virai, they were seen as serfs, perhaps even vassals. For their own part, the Mwama were docile and largely obedient. This would only change with the influx of their wild cousins from the east. But where mannish holy scripture would eventually declare all Nonmen abominations to be exterminated, the reverse was not true. Dismissiveness, occasionally ranging into spite or fondness, was all that men could provoke in Nonmen. They never considered their slaves as different in the eyes of cruel gods. To be fair, little is known of Nonmen faith. The legacy of Imumurul has left them defiant of the gods, withholding worship if not awe. They see all gods as malevolent, predatory entities who feast on the souls of the dead. Rejecting the mannish impulse to bow before this dread divinity, the Nonmen instead worship the space between the gods. Their religion idolizes oblivion, a state of non-being that happens to be extremely difficult to attain. In a fantasy version of Zen Buddhism, the Nonmen appear to have taught chthonic asceticism, monastic seclusion in the depths of the earth, where light and sound could not reach. This was the one true path to oblivion. Others, who engaged in worldly matters and dared any kind of greatness in this accursed world, risked attracting the attention of the starving sky and being forever devoured by the gods in the afterlife. But metaphysical threats were never enough to deter Nonmen from seeking glory in this life. Nonman chroniclers offer examples of great heroes who would often end up the most accursed. Their historical record, known as Isupharas, the Great Pit of Years, is said to be the most ancient text in existence. It functions as scripture for the Nonmen, who only allow it to be read backwards. They consult past events in reverse order, continually relating what has come before to what comes after. No numerical dating system exists. Nonmen associate the reading of these records to making a pilgrimage into the depths of the earth. No less than 3 would-be historians were executed for skipping ahead in the text, thus despoiling the holy deep. If there is one event that stands apart from all others in these ancient histories, it must be the day when the sky has cracked into potter's shards, when circumstance and hubris conspired to lay low the people of Dawn.